If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Central Valley Talk. My name is Ray Johns. I'm your host, and the name of my show is Voices Not Yet Heard. And like we say every week, we hope perhaps your voice will get heard today. I would like to talk to you about something that's going on. This is the 154th anniversary, by the way, of the Civil War. What an appropriate 4th of July this is. There's a group called Antifa, and rumors has it that they're going to Gettysburg this weekend to protest against the Civil War. My goodness, 154 years ago we fought this war. Now this group is, and as I understand it, they have plans to burn the Confederate flag and desecrate graves. You know, I don't even know what to say about that, except to say this. Obviously, if you trace my family back, you know, I'm sure they were slaves. And the Civil War was certainly the blackest day, the blackest time in the history of this country, okay? But let me say this about what they're doing. You know, the soldiers that fought for the South bled and died just like the ones in the North. I understand that in St. Louis they took the statue of Robert E. Lee down because of protesting. I think that's absolutely wrong. We're talking about history here. And they have the gall to come in and change history because they protest and demand that it's done. It's wrong. It's absolutely wrong, and I'm totally, totally against it. You know, Ulysses S. Grant once said that Robert E. Lee was the greatest general in the history of this country, and I'm sure if anybody knew it was Ulysses S. Grant. You know, and these people, I'll tell you what they are. This is just my opinion. You know, Antifa, I think that's the way. Anita. Is this group, and I don't know what the acronym stands for, but I do know that they're self-described anarchists, radical left-wing thugs who employ violence and intimidation to advance their beliefs. You know, and from everything that I've read, and I did my due diligence as I do every week, you know, they only dislike racism when it's carried out supposedly by white people. You know, this is absolutely ridiculous. You know, it's absolutely ridiculous, and I'm totally against it. You know, I don't think that, I of course, I don't think that necessarily the Confederate flag should be flown everywhere, but it certainly should be flown in the South. You know, those people have relatives, and if they trace their history back, who fought and died, you know, for what they believed in, you know, and they deserve to be honored. It's wrong that we would not honor that, you know. Anyway, that's just kind of my opinion, and let me say that I'm so glad to be here today, and I'm so glad you're joining me. I'm very glad of that. And, of course, I have my favorite guest back today, and that's Mr. Gary Miguel.
How is it, Ray?
Welcome back, my friend. And he's got a lot of things to talk to us about today. And, by the way, before I get out of here, we have a great guest coming next week. Gary is bringing this doctor here who's, well, I'll let Gary explain to you a little bit later on in the show who this, and we're going to talk about health care next week. And with this gentleman, he's going to be on, and so please tell your friends, tell everybody, if you have any questions about health care, please tune in to my show, and we'll try to get them answered for you. Gary, what's going on, buddy?
Well, Ray, I just listened to you there on that, and the only thing come to my mind was totally uneducated.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
However, totally indoctrinated.
And let me say something that Gary brought up earlier that I knew, but I think it's, you know, maybe a lot of you don't know this, because I didn't know it until a few years back, that there were African Americans, black, who fought for the who actually fought for the Confederacy. Now, what do we do with these people? You know, They fought and died for what they believe in. So what do? Do we take them and do we honor them because they were black, or do we put them in the categories with the whites and discard them? You know, I think that's a great question. If anybody wants to talk about that, please, I would love to hear your opinion about that. Gary?
Yeah, Ray, we got to go back and put it in the perspective of time then, not time now.
No, time then. You're absolutely right.
I mean, everything has to be done that way.
Mm-hmm.
So when you try and look back and come up with judgments and so forth based on what your familiarity or awareness is now about something, it has nothing to do with what it was like then.
Absolutely.
And it seems hard to understand. Why would a black man join the Confederate Army? Or, well, they
were promised freedom.
Exactly.
You know, they were promised.
And so he fought
for his freedom.
For his freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's almost like almost like the Northern black. He went up there to fight against the Confederacy because he wanted to be free. They have that in common. You know.
And as far as ownership of slaves, roughly, I think it's something like 17% of the slave owners of the South, because not everybody was a slave owner.
That's true.
Everybody gets the idea kind of like, well, every white person owned a slave.
No.
Well, no, the greater percentage did not own a slave. Okay, however, of the slave owners, roughly 17% were black people who owned black slaves.
Absolutely.
You know.
So what do you do with that?
But you had to put it into the perspective of back
do.
then, not looking at it from today.
Good point. Very good point, Gary.
And a lot of these people that you mentioned, I don't even know how to pronounce it. I know who you mean. I've read about it. I mean, it's like, why even pay those people any attention? Because they're not educated. I don't care how many degrees they have, but they're not educated.
You're absolutely right. It doesn't matter what they have.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
They're totally ignorant to what's going on.
Exactly.
Oh, by the way, let me tell you. I meant to say this earlier. Hopefully, this will be the last week that I have to wear these glasses. Okay, hopefully so. But I made the mistake yesterday at my business of walking outside of one of my mobile homes without them, and I tell you, it almost brought me to my knees. So. Dr. Fogg told me don't go outside ever without dark glasses on, until I'm cured, which is going to be, or healed, which is going to be a long, long time. Anyway, hopefully next week I'll be without them. Just wanted to put that point across.
Well, so much of what we see going on is a result of indoctrination.
Sure it is.
And it's not education.
Yeah.
And so when you look at it that way, you begin to have a little better understanding, even though you are totally against perhaps a certain view that they're taking.
Mm-hmm.
But you look back a little bit and you say, well, how could anybody of a normal something, how can anybody think that way at all? And then you have to sit there and say, well, they can't unless they're indoctrinated.
Yeah.
And they do believe in what they've been indoctrinated.
Sure.
And it has nothing to do whether they're a professor or they're a student.
Yeah, I got to say, Gary, and you and I have talked about this before, I've got to say this, I can't help but believe, that these useless idiots, I love to call them that because that's what they are, they're going there for one reason, and that's to raise hell,
Right.
And to, I don't know if you're aware of what happened in Portland, Oregon this week. They demonstrated in Portland, Oregon. There were 25 of them arrested. They had the gall to throw bottles and bricks at our law enforcement officers. And you guys all know how I feel about law enforcement officers. So I'm telling you right now how wrong that is. I wish they'd arrested every one of them. I'm sick and tired. I told you before, my grandmother had that great saying, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Well, I'm sick and tired of these liberal, useless idiots.
Well, so many of them are obviously they're unemployed. They're probably not even students, a lot of them.
Oh, no. Look what happened at Berkeley. They found out that 80% of the people that were there were not even students.
Well, and they didn't pay any attention when they went to school in terms of learning anything about the history of the country. When they took history class, they ditched it.
Sure they did. Half of them there, Gary, they don't even know why they're demonstrating.
No, they have no
demonstrating.
cue. I don't know. The problem that I see it is the biggest problem about those people or having that situation, which we see, including the attacks on police and so forth, Ray, the punishment is just not enough.
That's exactly right. I will go. Oh, yes. I agree with you totally.
Yeah.
Let's throw these people in jail and keep them in jail for a long, long time.
Well,
Maybe we'll
that's
stop this.
You got to just you got to take their reaction. It's all reward, risk, reward, risk, reward. Well, their reward has greater than their risk in their mind.
Oh, yeah.
And that's all that counts.
You're right.
That's all that counts. I can sit there and explain till I'm blue in the face, but what counts is what is that person actually thinking in terms of his risk reward. And if he thinks he's being rewarded, like for instance, I don't care what it is, throwing rocks through a window or something, but he has no consequence, he has no risk, and he gets the thrill out of throwing those rocks, and and you know an anger that he has been manufactured and indoctrinated with.
Sure.
Why not punish him greater than what his reward is?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's the only way it'll work, Gary.
Well, that is the only way. Of course, the libtards are going to look, oh, well, you're being, that's a cruel and unjust punishment.
Oh, of course
for the crime,
they're going to say
blah,
that.
blah.
Of course they are.
So forget all that. Just punch that punishment in there.
Yeah.
I don't care if it means that he or she, they're used to the idea, well, if I do that and I go to jail, I can bail myself.
Sure, that's exactly their
Don't
philosophy.
have any bail.
Yeah.
Put them there until they're sentenced.
There's got to be something to
And then
stop
sentenced
this.
to the full extent. But we can't do that if you have libtard judges
Oh, that's a problem. That's a
and
problem right there.
libtard law enforcement who are just as, I call it, useful idiots as they are.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
The only
You know,
difference-
our law enforcement officers have better things to do
Oh, of
than have
course.
to go to these.
Yeah.
I call them, and I've always called them this, I call them rioters. I don't call them protesters. It's like I said a long time ago.
right.
You know, Mahatma Gandhi, you know, was a protester. He protested against the British government, you know, and of course, Martin Luther King protested against civil injustice.
perfect
You know, they were protesters. These idiots are rioters.
And they were effective,
Yes, they were effective.
very effective.
Very
Martin Luther
effective.
King was extremely effective.
And so was
right?
Mahatma
And-
Gandhi. Yeah, they were both very effective.
And we can go on back
Come on,
to
sure we
others.
can.
Jesus was very effective with
Oh yes, absolutely.
He was a heck of a protester
Yeah.
against the Roman
Yeah,
government.
and what did he stand for? Nonviolence.
Right.
You know, it comes all the way back to him.
I don't recall him ever
What?
carrying a rifle. Do you?
No, of course not. You know, it blows my mind that these people think that they have the right to protest and hurt people, hurl bottles and rocks at police officers.
Well, you have a right to speak,
Absolutely, this is
but you don't have a right to destroy people and
We're not.
destroy property.
Yeah, we don't want to.
Yeah.
We don't want to take their First Amendment rights away. We can't do that. You know. Yes,
Exactly.
they have that right. They do not have the right to hurt people. They do not have the right to bring violence on a situation, and that's what they do.
Well, I think the only thing to solve that from a governmental standpoint or a societal standpoint, is to administer punishment greater than any kind of reward that comes from something like that.
Yeah.
And once you do that, it doesn't take long, and people realize it gets down to where, well, wait a minute, why am I doing 35 miles an hour in and not 70 miles an hour in a speed zone? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could go 70 miles an hour, but God, can you imagine the punishment if I do that in a 35?
Oh,
So it doesn't make common sense to do so, right?
No.
Because what have I done by doing that? By saying, well, I better keep it at 35. What have I done? I have not been willing to exert the risk which would get me a punishment far greater than me being
See, there it is. There
5
it is
minutes,
right there.
5 minutes
Absolutely.
late to where I'm going.
Gary, we're going to take a little break.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. And when we come back, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do this every week. We're going to do it's called a feature, I think it is, and it's about President Trump. They're very short, and it kind of reinforces what's happened during the week. These are very good short clips. We're going to hit those, and I'm sure Gary will have something to say about them. They're very good. One of them is on, and you know what a baseball nut I am, the Chicago Cubs. Excuse me, boy, I could get in trouble for that. The Chicago Cubs visiting the White House, and we're going to kind of do that every single week because I think it's informative and I think it's fun. So we'll be back in say 2, And 2, we're going to do this, I think, every week, and I think I'm doing it a lot of reasons because I know a lot of you people won't do due diligence. This just kind of keeps you informed every week of what has happened in the past week, and I think it's informative, and I think it's going to help you. So we're going to go to a couple of very short videos, 4 I think of them. They're very short, and I'll comment on them when we're done. So here we go.
When it comes to the future of America's energy needs, we will find it, we will dream it, and we will build it. American energy will power our ships, our planes, and our cities. American hands will bend the steel and pour the concrete that brings this energy into our homes and that exports this incredible newfound energy all around the world. And American grit will ensure that what we dream and what we build will truly be second to none. We will be number one again all the way. Going to make America great again. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, I'm back. I wanted you to see those. Pretty interesting. Donald Trump's doing everything that he said he would do. If the Libtards, as Gary said, and the useful idiots, as I call them, would get themselves out of the way, and we, of course, know why they want, because they're being paid by the people who owns the. So that's why I encourage you every single week to do your own due diligence, okay? Go out and find out. Don't take anybody's word for it. I do due diligence from the time this show is over till next week. I get calls from people who know things and who tell me things and make suggestions to me, and that's absolutely a big part of this show. But you must, I insist, you must find out from yourself. Don't be a follower. Be a leader. Gary?
Yeah, and I think we all get frustrated because of all we get is this kind of, from the media, negative feedback. In fact, it's at a rate of 95%.
I knew it was up there. I didn't know how.
95.
Is that unbelievable?
Well, so if you're somebody, if somebody, 90% of anything to do with you, Ray, was negative, wouldn't somebody after a while, you'd say, well, my God, how come that guy's not in prison or something?
Oh, yeah.
But here's what you got to look at in the bigger picture.
Okay.
Journalists, let's just say that journalists are 95% indoctrinated by the system, and they are liberals.
Sure.
That's just by nature.
Well, look who they work for.
Well,
who do they work for?
And look who they go to school to be a journalist.
Yeah.
Now you go to the journalism department and go listen to who's teaching them, and listen to them themselves. They're snowflakes.
Sure they are.
And they have no real capability.
Mm-hmm.
They're not very smart. Okay, to go to school and become a journalist, you don't have to be very bright. Well, there's so much of it.
I'm laughing because that's so true. Look at what's happening in the media with the social media.
Well, they're not very bright. And So when we take somebody like Trump and the people he surrounds himself with and compare IQs with that to a journalist, a journalist has never done anything.
No.
All he's ever done is whine and cry about something. Well, I'll give you an example.
Just watch CNN. It's a perfect example of what Gary's talking about.
Well, just let's watch ESPN.
Yeah.
When I was with baseball at that time, and they would come in, the journalists would come into the clubhouse. Here's these ball players. They're playing, playing a game to win, and maybe they made an error or something like that. Here's the journalist sitting there in sandals that, by God, he looked like a doughboy, and he's criticizing this player who could run 100 and 10 flat.
Yeah.
Hit a baseball 400 feet.
This guy probably doesn't even know what end of the baseball bat to pick up.
And then and thinking this pitcher or something, and thinking that he, the journalist, has an insight as to what he should have done or something like that. It was ridiculous.
I remember a couple of years ago, and I cracked up. I'm watching MLB, and the Giants were playing, of course, and Bumgarner's pitching. Obviously one of the best pitchers in the history of this game. And I think he did something which is very unusual for Bumgarner. I think he walked somebody with the bases loaded. And this journalist asked him in the clubhouse, he said, "Why did you walk that guy?" And Bumgarner looked at him and said, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
He couldn't even believe that this idiot would even ask him that question. So he just did what any sensible person would do. He just totally wrote this
Ray,
guy off.
I think you kind of get if you just think like that experience you just talked about, and just multiply that. Okay, so what you have there is all these journalists who have an ego that's they're insecure, and because of that ego, they are easily fractured and their feelings hurt. And so they spend all their time, 95% of their time, criticizing Trump. Okay? Because, for one thing, Trump's a winner. They're all losers.
Absolutely. I love that. That's exactly it. Donald Trump is a winner.
And they live in a loser's environment. They're brainwashed that way.
I love saying this. I said it 1,000 times. It's just like Gary's a winner. Somebody asked me, they said, and like I said, it was somebody I didn't like very well anyway, and I didn't want to even deal with him. And he said, "What do you do?" I said, "I win." That's what I do. I'm a winner.
That's all you
I
need.
win.
That's all you need to answer.
And that's Donald Trump.
So here's Trump over here. Actually, what he figured out in a hurry, he says, well, these people are of a lower mentale of probably 95% of the people that are working out there. You take a guy operating a heavy equipment in a construction job or a forklift, or a guy with a hard hat. He's got more common sense.
Exactly. We've talked about that before.
That's
common
right.
sense.
That's the biggest thing lacking that a libtard has. I don't care if he scored 150 IQ. If he doesn't have common sense, what good is he?
He's useless.
He's useless.
He's totally useless. I agree with you.
And that's what Trump understands. So what if you've noticed here in the last, let's just say the last 6 months that he's been president, 95% of the press has been negative, anti-Trump. How in the world did he accomplish so much in such a short period of time? And just like you just showed on those clips, that's not being discussed. They spent the other day, it was something like 1 hour compared to 350 hours minutes. 1 minute compared to 350 minutes criticizing Trump. Only 1 minute talking about something like.
Of course, it's like you and I. Go ahead.
So how do you expect somebody to do diligence if there's no diligence to go find?
Exactly. Exactly.
So anyway, I guess what I'm trying to get at is this. The country is moving at such a rapid pace in so many different areas, and as you illustrate, like the energy thing. That's just one of many.
One of many.
But think about it from Trump's standpoint. He purposely, or he prefers, and he keeps those people with those egos all stirred up, and they're all, their feelings are hurt, and they just talk about how bad it's been. Oh my God!
They have it's like I don't even know what to compare it to, but it's like a I don't know what's that shell game that they play. I forgot the name of it.
You
find the P under the thing. It's like Donald Trump is so smart. He's so incredibly intelligent
and surrounded. by
that these people don't even know what he's doing.
No,
they have no.
clue.
They don't have a clue.
They haven't
as
got
to
time
what he's
because
doing.
their feelings get hurt
Oh
real
yeah.
easy.
Oh yeah.
You
You know what? And you and I compared him before because we're a couple of old farm boys. We're a couple of old cowboys, and we compared it before. He's like an old plow horse.
Yeah.
You see him coming, and everybody's laughing at him because he's just plodding along. But he gets from A to B.
Well, the very fact they're against him twittering tells me right away that must be effective.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
It must be preferred. There's 115 million people following him on the social media now.
Gary, that's 1/3 of the country.
Well, if he was
1/3 of the country, I didn't know that.
If he was to start a Donald Trump news, like a CBS station, he'd be number one just overnight.
I hope he comes and gets you and I to be on the show.
I mean, he just sits over that Twitter and gets it done. Right?
Absolutely.
In the meantime, they're over. It reminds me of this, and because I remember as a kid, you're sitting there with grown-ups, and you're in the house, and what they do is they give you something, a ball or something, to go out and play and let the grown-ups. That's all Trump's doing. He gives those people something to go over here and play with,
exactly,
so that he can be here with the grown-ups and get something done.
Exactly,
and it gets done. Just look what just happened. Well, just for instance, 218 million acres just was under this regulation that Obama had.
Mm-hmm.
He left it. Do you hear anything about the press or anything? No, they're too busy talking about so and so's facelift.
Oh yeah. He sent them over there. He said, "Go over there, take care of this."
Yeah.
You take care of this.
He just sends them over there.
And I'll just keep.
And
I'll just keep on plodding.
And they sit there and grind around one another. So
Don't you love it though?
Well, yeah, because
and they don't
I
even
get a
see
kick.
it, Gary. They don't even see
because
it.
they're not smart. That's the bottom line. If they were smart enough, they'd figure it out. But they're not smart enough.
No.
And one reason they're not smart enough is they may have this super, IQ or something, but they are so.
Comes back to common sense.
They're so shrouded with their own egos, and they get those little egos, and they're so insecure. You just prick them a little bit, boy. They just.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they're just like a bunch of little kids playing out there. So in the meantime, you're over here. You're the grown up, right? Well, you're getting it done.
Yeah.
Why those
it's
little,
that old saying that I love. They can't see the forest for the trees.
Well,
where am I at?
You're out there working on your car because it's broke down. You're overhauling or something. Well, you can't have a bunch of little kids in there kept. Hey, how about this? So you send them over there to go play with something.
Yeah.
Meantime, you fix the car.
Exactly what he does. Great analogy.
And that's what he does.
Exactly what he does.
But Ray, what I wanted to talk about a little bit is let's look at our time. I'm going to save a little bit for it, and let's get back to the water and to our friend who was our guest last week.
Absolutely. Great guest last week. Why don't we talk about that now?
Yes.
Okay.
And what to think about here, what we have, and I'm going to try to keep it real simple. We got this dam up there that has 1 million acre feet.
Is that Pine Flat?
Pine Flat, and that's been since the 50s.
Okay.
About 54, something like that. Okay. Prior to the dam, all this water just ran wild. And I'm old enough
Went straight to the ocean,
remember
didn't it?
all.
Yeah.
Well, not straight to the ocean. I mean straight into towns and floods.
Oh, floods. You're talking about flooding. Okay.
and the Tulare Lake.
Yeah.
At one time, that Tulare Lake was bigger, area-wise, than any lake this side of the Mississippi.
I didn't know that,
Well,
Gary.
I didn't either until you look it up.
See why I love having this guy on my show? I mean, he's just the best guest ever.
Well,
always informative.
When Fremont came, I mean, there was Indian tribes living along that lake, surround that lake.
I did not know it was that big.
Oh, it was huge.
Gosh.
Well, let's just say it was at least this big. You go from Bakersfield and go all the way out to let's just say Fresno, and then go that way, but then go south probably about Riverdale in that area.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, what's that? 100 miles
At least.
Well, Flathead Lake's the biggest at 35, so that's 100.
Oh my!
And like I told you before, when I was flying back when they had this flood in '69, which was a little bigger than this one, according to Frank, we'd get out there and get down on the deck and just go all the way. And roast, you know what I mean? Just fly off the water and unobstructed.
Yeah.
And so you had Buena Vista Lake, and then you had Tulare Lake, and then you had Summit Lake.
I had no idea. How long ago was that, Gary, when it was so big? What, 30 years ago, maybe?
Well, I've seen the lake all the banks, I would say Stratford. Well, in fact, I've seen it there on Madison Avenue, and but anywhere south of that, all the way to Buena Vista. Well, then your Buena Vista is just about due west of Bakersfield, so that's a long distance, 70 miles or
At least,
something like
yeah.
that. But the point I'm trying to get with all this is that we talked about the flood control, and towns like Layton would flood, in as an example, and Visalia would flood. I mean, it was just, we all accepted floods. I remember when I was a little kid going to visit my uncle in Visalia, traveling in water to get there. I remember driving to Fresno.
Oh, yeah.
Pick up my, during World War II, pick up an uncle. I was a little kid, driving out through water all the way. I mean, it was this thing was flooded.
Yeah.
Well, that all ended with the dam.
With the dam,
Which is
yeah.
great. And that's what's Harry Truman getting the river for the purpose of flood control.
Yeah.
So he can get the dam built. Otherwise, we still wouldn't have a dam
Yeah.
if we left it up to the Libtards.
Oh, of course not.
You see.
Makes sense.
So anyhow, he gets the thing built. But here's the thing where I see today. Basically what happened is we transferred the lake from south of Stratford to Bakersfield, and we moved and put that lake up here at Pine Flat Dam. Does that make sense? Okay, that's 1 million acre feet. But like this year, we're talking about close to 4 million acre feet. So what happens to the overage? The overage goes to the ocean, all right? And they're doing everything they can to keep the water from going to the historical Tulare Lake. Why?
Yeah, that's my question.
Okay, because that is farm ground. And that is owned by, I mean, it's owned by more, but I'm going to say basically 5 big families maybe. Probably one, which is Boswell.
Yeah.
Now, they own that lake bottom. Now, they do not want it flooded. So, in the scheme of things,
Excuse me.
and the flood control, then that would be considered a flood. So what we're going to do then is, let's say you and I are doing it, we say, well, we got to keep that lake from refilling back up because we got all those people farming down there.
Yeah.
Well, not all those people, but a few of those people. And they got a lot of power.
Boswell being a major one.
And political power and
Yeah.
so forth. So historically, and it was fine at that time, we then just basically transferred that part so they could farm it, and we put it up there, and you have some regularity.
Yeah.
Okay, now we run the clock forward. Now, I remember that, but California was small then, maybe 15 million people.
Yeah.
Now we're sitting there at, what, 30, 40 million people, right?
Yeah,
So we have
we're usually exactly 10% of the national. So if we got 380 million people here, California's 38 million, roughly. Yeah.
Okay, so you look at it now, things have changed in terms of water and so forth, as Frank was pointing out, right? So let's look at it this way. If we could take that water then, look at that lake with this overreach, and it looks like we're going to put 1 million acre feet at least out in the ocean, which
Boy,
is,
that's a lot.
the size of the dam. Wouldn't it be nice to have that 1 million acre feet available down the road
Of
if
course
there's another
it would.
drought?
Absolutely.
And it would be.
Yeah, I mean, if we go through droughts like we've been going through for the last
Yeah.
few years,
Right.
that'd be ideal.
That'd be ideal, wouldn't it? Especially with the state going from, say, 10, 15 million to now, at that time, now sitting at 40.
Yeah,
well,
close to 40. Might as well
yeah.
say 40 million.
Yeah. So then we have a different water situation, don't we? Okay, then it would be, if you look at the common sense of it today, and forget about all the rest of the political part of it, let's send that water to the lake so it could be used later. When we send 1 million acre feet to the ocean, it's gone.
It's gone.
And we could have a drought next
Yeah.
year. Why not?
Sure.
Why not have 1 million acre feet there and 1 million acre feet here?
It makes so much sense, Gary. I mean, but then, things that make sense, don't you always jive. I hate that word, but they don't always jive with the liberals. If it makes
Well,
sense.
it's not
they're
going to
against it,
jive with the construct of the whole process in terms of making any common sense today. So I said, I worked for the river. I mean, during the flood,
Oh, I know you
flood
did.
we had. So
Yeah.
I got a good experience and learned a lot, obviously, to see it actually happen. and the water come down, and break levees. And
Gary, let me ask you this, because I think the audience would want to know this, and so do I. What do you see happening now? I mean, as far as
the water?
As the water, yeah. What do you see as far as the future with what's going on now?
Well, what I see right now, you're talking about in terms of this year or down the road?
I'm talking about both this year and down the road.
Yeah.
But give us some kind of idea of your opinion about what's going to happen. I mean, I know that's a wide range here, because a lot of things could happen.
Well,
I mean,
from a management standpoint of this year,
mm-hmm.
of managing the river, I think it has been absolutely phenomenal the job they've done.
Mm-hmm.
They've allocated it in the right time frame with the right amount to not cause any damage.
Well, and you and I, Gary and I met at the very first Trump rally. He was sitting down with his cowboy hat on, and there were about 6 people, and we kept talking over these people. I don't even know how we got started. I think you said something to me because I was a cowboy, and I said something to you because you're a cowboy, and I think that got it started. And of course, we both knew we were there for Donald Trump, and we met, and that's how he became a guest on my show, and a regular guest, which I'm really, really glad of. But we've talked about this before, and it's
and that water issue is what you wanted me to talk about in
exactly.
that first time. Right?
I did.
It was not politics. Well, I guess it did.
I think you coined the phrase, which I love. I think it was you. I'm almost certain that there's no drought. There's a political drought.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is a great term. I've used it a lot of times. But Gary coined that phrase.
Yeah, it's there is no drought, and there wouldn't be a drought. And it's a political drought.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
I love that term.
Well, and the number of dams that were proposed to be built, this was going back to the 20s. People were far different views in those days. It was an America like Trump sees it right now, of becoming great and not going the other way, which we've seen especially in the last 8 years with Obama.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Okay. Now we're talking about America being great again, right? Now, if we go back to that time in the 20s, there was proposed over 50 dams to be built in the Sierras.
I remember you said that about 6 months ago when you were on the show. Yeah, talk to us about that.
Well, and some of them were large and some of them were small. These were all water storage capability.
Yeah.
And that was...
We would never have had a drought if that had happened. Never would we have
never had a drought, and besides that, you'd have the power company paying you to turn your air conditioner on because it would generate so much power it'd light up the
Is
world.
that awesome or what?
It would. These were all hydroelectric dams, okay, and it'd just be incredible the amount of energy we generate out of something like that. So anyway, that of course then the do-gooders come into the picture, and then all that. We're lucky to get 3 of them built. I think there might be 4 now, but at that time I was working there, it was only 3 out of the 50.
Let me say something. Ladies and gentlemen, this is good stuff today. Please feel free to call in. The number will appear on the screen. If you'd like to ask Gary a question, if you'd like to ask me a question, if you'd like to just make a statement, feel free to call in. We welcome your calls.
Well, let's just look at the common sense approach then, Ray, on this particular year in itself. This is, like Frank said, this is like the 4th in the top 4 water.
Oh, yeah. I remember he said
water
that last
years
week,
we've had, right? Okay. Wouldn't it be, common sense would be nice if we said, well, we got way too much water. Excuse me. So let's send 1 million acre feet down to the Victoria Lake so we can use later.
Common sense. Like you said, it only makes sense.
Use later.
Yeah.
So we send it down there instead of the ocean.
We have a drought.
And we got 1 million,
sitting right
storage up there. So now we went from 1 million to 2 million without building a dam.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Unreal.
Now, we would utilize reverse pumping. Well, that's been done before, you see. And so, but what has happened is things have changed. A lot of those growers down there were actually hoping for a flood.
Why is that, Gary? Explain that to everybody.
Well, because you planted wall-to-wall cotton, and it goes underwater.
Oh, my goodness.
You collect the insurance.
You heard it here on this station, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, this guy is just phenomenal. I learn things from him every week. That's why I love having him on my show.
Well, what's happening, all of a sudden, you're one of the guys down there that planted cotton. You're saying, oh, my God, I got to go through and chop it. And I got to pick it. Oh, Lordy, here I thought I was going to sit back and go out the mailbox and I'd big fat check.
I'm going to take that vacation that I've been waiting to take
and I'd
all
have,
this time.
I'd have my boat out there riding on that. Now I got to go out there and work that cotton. And then, and of course, they would sell water down to L.A. and all that.
Sure.
On top of everything else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in today's time, it would be a benefit to flood that lake for some of those farmers.
Oh, absolutely. I can see that.
I know if I had land down there, I'd like it flooded.
Well, heck
Wouldn't
yeah.
you?
Oh, well, heck yeah. I'll take that check.
And we'll go fishing.
I'll take that major check. Yeah, you and I'll go fishing. I agree. Buddy, we're going to take another break here, and we'll be back in, say, 2 and 2. We're going to pay some bills.
Things were gone. I'd worked for all my life, and I had children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American.
Okay, I'm back, ladies and gentlemen, with my favorite guest, Gary, and we're nearing the end of the show. Every time we have Gary on, it's like this. We have a very, very special guest coming next week, and those of you who are concerned about health care, which is everyone is concerned about that, and I've done my due diligence on the health care bill, and like I said, I encourage you to do. But for those of you who don't, we have a gentleman coming next week who I think will answer all your questions, and it's going to be a great time. We're going to talk about the health care bill, and Gary's bringing this gentleman, and so I'm going to let Gary tell you a little bit about this doctor.
Well, his name is Dr. Willie Ewing, and
he's your personal physician, too.
Yeah. We kid. I've known him for over 40 years.
Oh my goodness!
When I was in the construction business down there in Lemoore, or in Lemoore, we were building.
When you were building houses?
Yeah, well, he bought one of them, and he was my neighbor.
Oh, how cool.
And then we go back about 40 years. And people say, well, how good a doctor is he? I said, I don't know. All I know is he's kept me alive for over 40 years. And that hasn't been easy.
So it's pretty good for you, huh?
Well, he's been pretty good for me. I said, we kind of kid about it. I said, my God, well, every time I go in there for a physical or something, I said, well, you've kept me alive for 40. I said, let's try another one.
Yeah, really. Let's do another 40 years at least.
Let's just try another year on this thing. But anyway, I think it'd be good in terms of bringing a doctor's perspective
absolutely
to that healthcare issue.
Yeah, please,
I think we all will learn a lot because, we get, after all, we're subject to getting only things that the liberal or the press or media gives us on the TV, and this guy is probably, you're probably not going to agree with everything he says about it, but at the same time,
you'll be informed.
Yeah, you're going to be informed, and you're going to have a perspective, and I think he's chairman of the board of the hospital down there in Hanford.
Oh wow, okay.
And but he's an outstanding individual. Yeah. He's a fighter jet pilot.
Oh, he is like you. Oh, how cool is that?
Well, every squadron has a flight surgeon. Mm-hmm. That's just a required. Mm-hmm. And the way it is it's a doctor that decides to be he's a doctor. He's in the military, and then he is the flight doc.
Mm-hmm.
And
he's also a pilot.
But he's also a combat ready pilot.
Oh, how cool is that?
I mean,
that's so neat.
That's pretty rare, and he. Most of the time, what you do is that these flight surgeons they have to put in 4 hours a month to qualify for flight pay. Is really what it boils down to, and that's an incentive for them to be in the military and not go out. You know what I mean?
Wow, yeah.
Well, yeah, you try to get
that
as
is
much
interesting,
possible.
very interesting.
And one of them is flight pay, but one of them is they got to get 4 hours flight time. Well,
is that every month, Gary? Or?
Yeah, every month, and so. What we do is, like for instance, you as one of the pilots, Ray, you have the dock this afternoon. You take the dock up for, And so he logs flight time. Not pilot, but flight time.
Yeah,
That's
but
all he
I
needs.
just got to ask you this because I'm curious. When you guys go up, how long generally would you
2 hours,
fly?
just figure.
2 hours?
Just figure 2 hours.
How far would you fly? Let's say you left Fresno. How far away would you fly? Or do
Well,
you fly?
normally when we left Fresno, we'd fly off the coast of Monterey between, say, San Francisco and as far south as, I guess, Santa Maria. Sometimes we get down into Santa Barbara. Then we go from Santa
What
Barbara.
a duty. Can you imagine this? That sounds so beautiful to me.
And then the other area we'd go is Reno 1 Charlie, which is out over the Sierra Nevadas. Over the top of the Sierra, then we're in Nevada between the Oregon border to, I don't know, down to Walker Lake and then racetrack pattern.
And you would do that within 2 hours. Of course, you guys are screaming.
Well,
I mean,
we're doing our mission, you know.
Let me ask you this, because and I'm so fascinated with flying. I really am, and I always have been as a kid, from the time I was a kid. How fast are you going in those things when you fly?
Well,
Ballpark.
I'll just ballpark it and say 600 miles an hour.
Yeah.
You know.
A little faster than the speed of sound, probably, huh?
No, speed of sound something
what,
like
650?
750 or
Oh,
I
is
don't
it?
know.
Yeah.
650.
Yeah, I think it's 650.
There's
yeah.
knots and miles per hour. You
Yeah.
know. But no, well, let's just say we're normally on something like that, on a mission like that. Your speeds are varying, you know. But you'll go probably on average, I'm going to say 0.87 Mach. Everything is in Mach. It's not in
Yeah.
you know, I guess it's not, we don't have a speedometer that says, I'm at 0.85, I'm at 0.95 or so. Okay, so let's say cross country, I don't want to be cruising at Mach or above because you burn too much fuel, you know. So in certain airplanes, so let's say you're cruising at 0.91 Mach. That's 91% of being supersonic.
Oh, okay. All right. I understand that.
Transonic is what starts at about 0.91, 0.93 to 0.97, 98, just a little under.
Yeah.
And then when you just, you know, if you go over the speed of sound, then obviously that's that's 1 Mach.
Yeah.
You know, 1.0.
Oh, so that's how they measure, huh?
Yeah, everything is
okay,
done
I
in
understand
Yeah,
about
1
that.
Mach is the speed of sound. 2 Mach would be twice the speed
Oh,
of
okay. All right.
sound. So, we'd go 1.2, 1.1, the capability of it. But it's not really used as much as people think you would, you know, because there's some limiting factors with it. The airplane gets heavy, gets at those speeds like that. It's not as maneuverable, and also you're burning a lot of fuel.
Oh, I bet. That makes sense.
You know, I mean, when you're sitting there, if I'm doing 0.89 or 0.85 or 0.80, do I really know any difference between that? No,
I would think not.
No,
yeah.
you don't know. 'Cause you're so high, you don't know it's any difference. So.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like and it always happens. I say it every single time I have Gary on. He's so interesting that all of a sudden you look up and you've already done a full hour, which of course is the case here today. Now, and let me remind you, please, if you have any problems or any questions about health care, next week will be the time to tune in. We're going to have a great, with Dr. Willie here, we're going to have a great physician here that's going to enlighten us, and I look forward to being enlightened. Anyway, you know, I'm going to go back to this, and we talk about it every single week. Gary's done it. When you see a law enforcement officer, please go up and shake his hand and give him some praise. They don't get that. What they get is a lot of crap from a lot of people all the time, and bad looks, and people yell and scream at them and treat them just awful. I want everyone to start going up. Spend one day, every day if you can. You're going to see one someplace. Just shake his hand and tell him how much we appreciate him, because they do a lot for a minimal amount of pay. And they don't get a lot of credit. And we should turn this thing around and start appreciating our men in blue and women in blue here in Fresno, because they do a great job. And without them, we couldn't even exist. So let me say this, but before I do, you're coming back next week with the doctor, so I don't have to welcome you back. But I appreciate Gary so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me say this like I say every week. Until we meet joyously again next Friday at 3 o'clock, heaven's blessings.
At least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the men who died.
Fellow Americans, This week I was joined at the White House by American families whose loved ones were killed by illegal immigrants. Many of these illegal immigrants had extensive criminal records and had been repeatedly deported. Every single one of these deaths was preventable. These beautiful American lives were stolen because our government refused to do its job. If the government had simply enforced our immigration laws, these Americans would still be alive today. That's why, since the day I took the oath of office, I have been restoring the enforcement of our immigration laws and the protection and defense of our borders. These courageous Americans joined me at the White House to call on Congress to pass two bills that I campaigned on during the election. If enacted, these bills will save countless American lives. The first bill, Kate's Law, is named for Kate Steinle, who was killed by an illegal immigrant who had been deported 5 times. This law will enhance criminal penalties for those who repeatedly re-enter our country illegally. The second bill, the No Sanctuary for Criminals Act, will block federal grants to jurisdictions that shield dangerous criminal aliens from being turned over to federal law enforcement. On Thursday, I am glad to report these two bills passed the House of Representatives. This represents a crucial step toward ensuring our public safety and national security. I want to thank Judiciary Chairman Bob Goodlatte for his dedicated work on these critical bills, as well as other crucial legislation that will soon be considered as well. I also thank leadership for advancing these life-saving measures. I now call on the Senate to take up these bills and send them back to my desk for signature as soon as possible. We need security, we need safety in our country. And I call on all members of both parties to stand united with victims to stop these terrible and senseless crimes from ever happening in the first place. This legislation presents a simple choice. Either vote to save and protect American lives, or vote to shield and comfort criminal aliens who threaten innocent lives, and they've been shielded too long. As we head toward the 4th of July, we remember now more than ever to cherish our freedom. The foundation of freedom is the rule of law. It forms the bedrock of our Constitution and the cornerstone of our way of life. So this Independence Day, while we're enjoying treasured time with our friends and loved ones, let us not forget the families who have an empty seat at the table this year. And let us pledge that from now on, we will protect, defend, and save American lives. Thank you.
Who gave that right to me, and I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Contact the Realtor of the 21st Century, Rick Munoz, at rickmunoz.realtor. Call Rick at area code 559